On this episode of Locked On Lightning, we're breaking down tonight's big win in overtime over the Buffalo Sabres. All that and more. But first, let's play that music.
You're Locked On Lightning, your daily podcast on the Tampa Bay Lightning. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And welcome to another episode of Locked On Lightning, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. I'm your host, Adam Danker. I'd like to thank all of you for making us your first listen of the day. And if you haven't already, please go ahead and subscribe to the podcast on YouTube. Hit that subscribe button, hit that notification button, and hit us with a thumbs up and a comment below. And if you're listening on an audio platform, go ahead and subscribe to us wherever podcasts are distributed in audio. On this episode of Locked On Lightning, we're discussing the dramatic win on the road up in Buffalo, one of two of a back-to-back, 6-5 win in overtime in what was a very dramatic comeback in the last couple of periods. And when I mean, obviously, the third and the overtime period. And in a game where Tampa looked, and one of our listeners on Twitter, I can't think of his handle right now, but you know who you are, threw out a pretty interesting observation during the game when I was doing my back and forth when I tweet something and fans reach out to me during the show. I mean, during the game, said this Tampa team looked old, and I can't disagree. They looked old for the most part, with a Sabres team that, you know, had their ups and downs during the first couple of weeks of the season, but has really, really come on. You know, they're not your regular Sabres where they are bottom of the barrel. You know, last year we spoke about it on this show, how, you know, they got off to a good start and eventually they kind of just fell off. I mean, yeah, they are seventh in the division, but at the same time, this team is tough. You know, they have a goal differential of 2, but some of the players on this team, you know, they have a very young team, and you know, they spoke about it quite a bit on the Lightning broadcast tonight. But this Buffalo Sabres team, and if this game is any testament, which I feel like it will be going forward, you know, there might be some pieces added here and there, but this Sabres team, along with a couple of the other teams in the division, namely Detroit, these teams, if they keep going in that trajectory of which we've seen them this year thus far, I mean, we all know what Detroit can do, and we've seen very early on in the season what Buffalo could do. This is going to be a very, very, I mean, if it isn't already, a very stacked division, a very tough division, a division where even if you're not playing against a divisional foe, points are going to be, you're going to have to scrap and claw, and every game is going to have to be in a very important one, because points are going to be scarce in terms of, you know, I feel like a lot of races in this division, especially 1 through 4, and even, you know, the wild card. And I'm confident that down the line, whether it be this season or in the upcoming seasons, I would not be shocked if we see 2 teams at the Atlantic in the wild card spots once the playoff starts. And we're seeing it right now. I mean, Detroit is one of them. They're the number 1 team in the wild card. And then you got Florida and Montreal not too far off in that race. So curious to see how that shapes up. And, you know, depending on how Tampa are doing at any time of the season, you know, they could be themselves in that kind of that predicament, because Detroit's only 1 point behind the Lightning right now in the division. But in this game, in tonight's game, I mean, usually in a game like this, even with a win in overtime, I would want to come out and talk about how Tampa looked old. They looked slow. They at times were very sloppy, especially in the neutral zone. They did not come out, and for a majority of the game until really the late second, early third, were not the better team. And, even with everything tied up going into the third, Tampa, I thought, was not the better team. Obviously, those last couple of minutes, about 14 minutes in, it kind of seemed like something awoke within Tampa, with Stamkos getting his first of two of goals in the game, and then Brandon Hagel on the power play. But if we're gonna sum up this game and really what was the reason, other than the last six or I guess 5.5 minutes of this game and overtime, I would say Brian Elliott was really the reason why Tampa stayed in this game. Yeah, his save percentage didn't look exactly great in this one. He gave up 5 goals, but in this game, throughout the course of this game, especially in overtime, made a lot of big saves, a lot of saves in which we expect those saves from Vasilevsky. And I've said it on this show before this season that Brian Elliott has really done a phenomenal job, even dating back to late last year, as a backup. And the Lightning have really been spoiled over the last 3 seasons, in having very good backups where, let's face it, Vasilevsky isn't exactly shut down this year. He's certainly not in the Vezina Trophy conversation as of right now. And you're going to have to rest him, and definitely on a back-to-back, especially with Boston coming up tomorrow night and Lightning looking for some revenge, and definitely going to be having him out there. Putting Brian Elliott in, and especially in a game like this, because like I said, in seasons to come, and especially this year, every Atlantic Division game is going to be a dogfight out there. Every team from top to bottom, regardless of where they at or are they at in the season, are really going to give Tampa a run for their money, just given the fact of what the Lightning have done over the last 3 seasons. A lot of teams don't forget that, yes, at times Tampa was riding high, and maybe a little bit, regardless if they were cocky or not, you still look at that as an opposing team and you're jealous. And you have every right to be jealous or feel a certain type of saltiness towards this team. And every team is going to go out there and try and take it to Tampa on a nightly basis. And the Buffalo Sabres certainly did that tonight. Right off the bat, out shooting Tampa Bay 14-4, in which was really just a dominance of puck possession by the Sabres. I mean, if you want to look at textbook defensive puck shutdown out there, just enacting their will, especially in the neutral zone, the Sabres were doing that. They were doing it in the neutral zone. They were doing it along the boards. Couldn't have really gotten any better out there for Tampa. I mean, for Buffalo. And I can't even blame the Lightning in that first period. They just were not the better team. I would have probably been a little bit more harsh if the game ended differently tonight, especially in regulation. But yeah, the Lightning did a very good job of basically jumping out of their own grave, building back up, which we have spoken a ton about on this show, about how games aren't won in one period. They're won over the course of a game, and that's what we saw tonight in Buffalo. And so a very impressive win, a very impressive performance. We'll talk about more about some of the things that we saw tonight in just a bit. But overall, if I had to grade this game, I'm giving the Lightning an A. And I don't, if you're a frequent listener of this show, you know that I don't like to over celebrate certain things with the Lightning, unless obviously it's a Stanley Cup wins or playoff wins. But regular season wins, this is one of the better wins, or if not the best win thus far this season for the Tampa Bay Lightning. So we'll talk about more about this game, some of the things we saw, some of the things we didn't like, or some of the things actually that we did like, because this is a game where we have to take all that positivity. But first, I want to remind all of you that this episode is brought to you by SimpliSafe. Now, did you know that over the holidays, property crimes like burglaries and package theft spike nationally? That's why our friends at SimpliSafe Home Security are offering 50% off their award-winning security system so that more families can feel safe and secure this holiday season. Order your SimpliSafe system for half off today. Enjoy advanced security and greater peace of mind this holiday season. This is why I love it. I love the 24/7 monitoring agent. I have this in my home. One time I don't know what I did. I pressed the wrong button and the whole thing went off. And I was able to speak to an agent right there on the spot, and they helped me figure this out. And like I said, I love the 24/7 professional monitoring service, and not only because of the helpful usefulness of the agents that are ready to help you with any questions or any issues that you may have, but the fact that it costs less than $1 a day. That's less than half the price of ADT's traditional professional install system. With the top rated SimpliSafe app, stay in complete control of your system anytime, anywhere. Arm or disarm and unlock for a guest, access your cameras, or adjust system settings. So don't miss your chance to save big on the only security system I recommend. So get 50% off at any new SimpliSafe system at simplisafe.com/LockedOnNHL. This is their biggest discount of the year, so don't wait. That's simplisafe.com/LockedOnNHL, because there's no safe like SimpliSafe. So once again, I want to thank everybody for making this show your first listen of the day. If you're listening to us in the morning, good morning. If it's the middle of your lunch day, hope you're having a good lunch. Or if you just got home from work, hope everything was going good at your job or whatever time or place you are listening to this. We'd like to thank you for your continued support. Make sure to subscribe to the show. Follow us on our social media pages at LO_Lightning on Twitter. And then you could follow us at LockedOn_Lightning on Instagram. And you could follow me on Twitter at DankyDank, DENKYD8NK. Love hearing from all of you. And so, yeah, the fan that I heard from during this game, made a very good point. This Lightning team looked old. I mean, and I responded back saying, this is really nothing new with this team, with looking old. But I also threw in a little nugget there as well, saying they look disorganized. And I kind of feel those two are hand in hand with this team, because, and I've spoken about this many times before on the show, it's not only do the Lightning run into situations where they kind of just, not that they're consciously waiting to, I guess, get their horses running out of the barn, but it's more so is that they take too long, in my opinion, to figure out the flow of the game. And a lot of that, I think, especially last year and this season, really has to do with not only the mileage, but the age, the amount of just if you look at this team, this team is not really a young team. There's really not a lot of spring chickens on this Tampa Bay Lightning team, but listen, they make it work, and that's what's the most important thing. But yeah, I mean, do I expect Tampa Bay to continuously win hockey games and look like a young team when you have guys like Pierre-Edouard Bellemare, who did not play tonight? He has a personal issue that he is dealing with, so he was not in the game for this one, who is 37 years old. You got, Alex Killorn, 33, but a lot of miles on him. The way he plays his game, very much physical, down low, fighting and scrapping for every puck. Get hit with a lot of shots, so maybe tack on a couple of years with that, maybe 35. Pat Maroon's 34. Corey Perry's 37. He has definitely shown his age this year. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. Listen, he's a very good, talented player, but at the end of the day, I mean, really, this team has a lot of older players on it, minus Brian Elliott. If you had to, really break it down, 5, 6, 7, 8 players over the age of 30, 31 on this team. Vladislav Nemestikov just turned 30 on November 22nd. So really not going to say that he's part of that. But yeah, this is a team that I feel oftentimes is just, they are never winning the energy battle out there. And we definitely saw that tonight, that they were definitely the Buffalo Sabres came out with loads of energy. I believe the broadcast at one point said that the Buffalo Sabres, I think they had like 5 players, maybe 6, something a little bit more than that, where we're around the age of 21, which is almost mind-blowing, but at the same time, not surprising. Like we've spoken about, that the Sabres team has not been good in recent years. A lot of high draft picks. So what do you expect? But yeah, really what I saw from this game was, the Lightning, they were figuring it out as the game was going on. Nick Perbix, I mean, we got to talk about him in this one. He's looking more and more like a leader of the future in every single game that we've seen. Excuse me. Even if it's not like we're going into Lightning games really expecting now, in my opinion, if you're watching Nick Perbix closely, and if you're not, please go ahead next time the Lightning are playing, which is tomorrow night, so you don't have to wait long. But Nick Perbix is really turning out performances, even if it's not turning into points out there on the score sheet, where he is having very good effects on the game. He is playing smart. He's passing when need to. He's not playing outside of his realm of talent, and that shows a lot of maturity on his point. And I'm excited to see how he evolves as the season goes on. I expect him to get better and better. But yeah, he has played fantastic. I mean, we've spoken about Mikhail Sergachev. He's been having a phenomenal season thus far. Mikhail Sergachev had 3 points in this one. Mikhail Sergachev, who I said at the beginning of the season, who I'm not going to sit here and pat myself on the back, but Mikhail Sergachev, I said at the beginning of the season in the summer that this was, in my opinion, even though he got that contract in the summer, this was a make or break season. This is where you needed to show up and prove that you are worth this money for this amount of time. That, because we all were high on him after the bubble in 2020, and he really took kind of a step back. And a lot of it, I don't believe, was talent. I think a lot of it more was just mental. And you see the maturity in Mikhail Sergachev this year, where I've always believed that he was able to score goals and be kind of what Hedman is, but more of the offensive side. And he is showing it thus far this season. Through 20 games played, he has 19 points. 4 of those are goals. So what more can you ask for? What more could you really ask for from Mikhail Sergachev to do? And by the way, that leads all defensemen on this team in points, which is crazy to think about when you have a guy like Victor Hedman, who in years past has been a points machine. But in this game, the Lightning played, as the game was going on, they only got better and better. And really what it started was in the face-off circle, which we've spoken about a lot, that really on any given night, you're really not going to expect the Lightning to dominate the face-off circle, but they were 60% in the face-off circle, especially with Pierre-Edouard Bellemare not in the lineup is crazy statistic to me. But this shows that this team is starting to figure it out. Now, in long-term hypotheticals, do I expect this to consistently be a thing? No. But this is where, like I said before, Tampa showed their maturity, showed their experience, and that's what eventually. That's why I said on a couple of weeks ago in an episode before that, sometimes the Lightning can get away with performances like this because especially when they get off to a slow start, if they're playing a team like a Sabres, like an Ottawa Senators, which was an ugly win in the beginning of November, they could get away with little things like this because experience, I believe, in the game of hockey wins out. And the Lightning managed this game very well, and they did a phenomenal job. And the other thing that really stuck out to me before we wrap things up, actually two things that stuck out to me. The power play. I mean, for as much as I complain about this Tampa team not executing on the power play, they did a phenomenal job of taking advantage of the opportunities that were afforded to them tonight. Braydon Point with a power play goal, actually two power play goals, excuse me, and Brandon Hagel with the power play goal that was deflected off of him in front that ended up tying the game. That's what you want to see. And even though they may not have gotten a lot of shots off on certain power plays, on certain sequences, I thought they were doing a very good job of moving the puck around. I mean, there was a little bit frustration on my end, at least, when Tampa, especially in the second period, were threading the needle too much. They were just trying to go to those long ice passes, those cross ice passes. And, they were playing, but I can't fault them on the power play. They were playing smart. And for the most part, they were dominating those power plays, and it resulted in 3 goals and 4 chances. So wrapping things up, once again, I just want to thank everybody for making us your first listen of the day, whether, what time, or where, what place you are listening to us or watching this on YouTube. I want to thank everybody for your continued support of this show. So, yeah, the Tampa Bay Lightning win one, edge one out 6-5 in overtime against a very, very scrappy Buffalo Sabres team. Very scrappy Buffalo Sabres team. A team that I could only say, regardless of what you feel about them, just looking at the standings, excuse me, this is a team. If and we've spoken about this with Detroit, we spoke about it with Ottawa. Ottawa is just kind of just in a weird place right now, and I feel like that just has to do with the fact that this team is getting sold sooner. Hopefully, gets sold, and I'm sure the fans feel like that sooner rather than later. There's a lot of, I feel, disconnect with the front office and kind of just a lot of different things going on. But yeah, the big key for the Lightning going forward, not only this year, but over the next couple of years, with their recent success, obviously their draft pool hasn't exactly, or what they have pulled in through the draft, hasn't exactly been top tier talents. But having said that, a lot of these guys that they have drafted over the last couple of years are, in my opinion, and you could take this any way you want, I feel like their second line talent. I feel like that's their ceiling for a lot of them, which can be a little concerning as this core ages out because of, Stamkos isn't going to be around forever. Cooch is on the verge of turning 30. Same with Point. You're going to need guys to slide into those positions. And right now, the Tampa Bay Lightning don't have those players in their farm, I think. I mean, there are players that, like I said, I think for the most part, this Tampa team, or this Tampa organization up in Syracuse, the Crunch, I think a lot of these young players, or even the ones that are still in junior, I feel like a lot of those players are players that right as of now, a lot of things could change. We saw with Kucherov and Point weren't first round draft picks. So, things could change over time. We saw there's countless players who have been drafted in later rounds and have really done a phenomenal job and gone on to become NHL superstars. But as of right now, I mean, Tampa doesn't really have that level of talent as of now. But looking at the standings, Tampa is going to have to be careful with some of these younger teams, and Detroit's a team that worries me. Buffalo, regardless of, like I said, they are in 7th place in the division. Tampa and Buffalo, though, are only separated by 8 points. So, one team goes on a hot streak, the other team falters off, and in 2 weeks we could be discussing that these two teams have flip-flopped or even a point apart in the standings. But right now, ideally, as the month of November winds down, I am very happy with where the Lightning are. Now, I ideally would like them to be in the 2nd spot in the division. You might think I'm crazy with saying this, but I think the Lightning are a better team than Toronto. I still, with what their goaltending situation is, with just even watching them here and there, they're not a team that overly impresses me nor really makes me scared. Yeah, Austin Matthews, still one of the best players in the National Hockey League. But really, when you look at this, other than William Nylander and Jonathan Tavares, and Mitch Marner, what do you have after that? And we'll talk about that as when the Lightning do run into the Toronto Maple Leafs, which I'm not going to really get into. Which these two teams will be playing each other on Saturday, the 3rd. But tomorrow night, I mean, you're going to get another tough test. You're going to see the Lightning playing against the Boston Bruins in Boston. The Boston Bruins have yet to lose a game in regulation at home this season. Like we stated last week, going into that matchup against Boston. Boston, one of the more impressive teams thus far this season, and it really is impressive, given if you look at their roster and what they had going in. I was skeptical about the whole David Krejci signing in the offseason after he took a season off. So, but they've and their very strange goaltending situation going on there. But listen, you got to give credit to them. You got to give credit to the coaching staff too, and the leaders on this team. Done a phenomenal job, especially with the recent controversy, which I'm not even going to comment on with that. But yeah, just a phenomenal Boston Bruins team, and yet another phenomenal matchup and test for this Tampa team. I really think if I wouldn't mind if we see some sort of replication of what we saw tonight carried into tomorrow's night against the Bruins, because I think, especially with Vasilevsky and net, if you get 85% of what you would expect from Vasilevsky, from a stereotypical Vasilevsky performance, which, if you don't know what that is, 35 saves, giving up 1 or 2 goals, making great saves here and there. If we could get 85% of that, I think that we will see a very close game tomorrow night. I think the Lightning are looking for a little bit of revenge. If not, I would question where their heads are at. But they got to be riding in tomorrow's game very high, not gripping their sticks too tight, and not trying to do too much. Just trying to do a little bit of what you saw tonight against a very good, young, scrappy Buffalo Sabres team. And I know you're kind of comparing 2 different weight classes between the Sabres and the Bruins, but we can't really worry about that difference between those 2 teams. All we got to worry about is what this Lightning team, what kind of performance they put out on the ice in that one. We'll be back early tomorrow morning. So keep an eye out for that episode, talking about the upcoming game, the big upcoming game, one of the, I guess the biggest game of the month, considering we are closing out the month of November against another divisional foe. So I would expect a top tier performance from Tampa going to that one. And I would expect a very, very chippy game. But like I said, we'll be previewing that game tomorrow early. So make sure to check that out. But in the meantime, that's been it for this episode of Locked On Lightning, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. I'm your host, Adam Tanker. I'll talk to you in the next one.